So today we're making
lemon basil chicken thighs. So they have a really bright lemony flavor, but that basil just kind of balances it out. It's delicious.
a little bit of shallots, a little bit of garlic, some spices. It's a great dish.
And it's also, you can get it on your table quickly, which is one of my favorite things about chicken thighs. So I'm Jen.
And I'm Barbara.
And we're with Pressure Cooking today.
Okay, so we start off by putting some salt and pepper on our boneless, skinless chicken thighs. I didn't used to be a fan of chicken thighs until I had them cooked in the pressure cooker. The fat just kind of melts away and you just get tender chicken. Sometimes breasts can be a little more dried out in the pressure cooker, but with thighs you don't get that. So wait for your pressure cooker to get hot.
Yep.
Add a little bit of your oil. And then you're gonna have to brown in batches. You can just rotate that oil around if it's settled to the sides.
We are cooking in the Instant Pot Easy today, which has a non-stick pot. Ooh, hear that sizzle?
Yeah, so especially when you're using a non-stick pot, you want to make sure you see that it says hot on your Instant Pot. We've got 8 breasts today, so we can get 4 and 4. That'd be awesome.
So it's important when you're cooking in the Instant Pot, you don't want to crowd your meat because then it cooks like one big giant piece of meat and it steams rather than browns.
Right. And since we're using the non-stick pot on the Easy,
we've got our handy dandy kitchen tongs that do not have
metal on the bottom to scrape up our pot. You want to be very careful with that.
Yep. Sometimes I bend the rules a little bit and still will use my metal to add the chicken in, but you definitely don't want to be stirring around on your pot with a metal utensil. These tongs are, I think, OXO brand. We got a link to them in our Amazon shop, which we'll put in the description. And you can choose, if you're in a hurry, you can skip the browning step altogether. For me, the flavor difference is worth spending a little bit of extra time to get this nice browning. You can brown just one side or you can brown both sides. It just depends on what you're going for time-wise.
So let's check those and see how they're doing.
All right, so we just decided for this time we're gonna just brown on one side. That way we get some of that browning flavor, but we get the time benefits. We just added our second ones in, and if while you're cooking you notice that the brown on the bottom starts to get a little too dark,
yeah.
You can add a little bit more oil, or you can add just a little bit of beef broth or chicken broth.
Chicken broth in this recipe.
Yep. And doing it that way just helps ensure that you get that nice browning. If it turns black, your food will taste like burning. The finished sauce will taste burnt, and there's no coming back from that. But if it's just a nice dark brown, by adding that little bit of extra oil or the broth, it'll help save that.
Yeah, so just keep an eye on it while you're sauteing. You don't want to wander off and do something else.
No.
Yeah, so we've got our chicken breasts out. There's enough oil still in the pot. We're going to add the shallot. Maybe just a little bit more oil because it's kind of run to the side. And just give it a swirl there. Okay.
Garlic?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, my hand is slippery.
Just a little saute on that garlic will mellow out the flavor and not give it quite such a bite.
Okay, and then once it's ready, we've got a little bit of cumin, a little bit of coriander in this jar. We'll just add those once.
Yeah, it looks pretty good.
Okay, add that in and just give it a nice stir. And then when those are mixed in with the shallot, we'll add our chicken broth. Chicken releases a lot of liquid as it cooks, and so the half a cup plus the liquid that the chicken releases will get us above that 1 cup minimum threshold. If you're making this in a larger pressure cooker, like an 8-quart, you can add a cup of chicken broth, and then you might have to thicken the sauce a little bit longer.
Yeah,
but
so Jen's just taking her time to deglaze the bottom of the pot, making sure all of those nice brown bits that'll add flavor to your sauce are absorbed. So you want to stir in the salt and the pepper.
Yep.
And then we'll go ahead and add the chicken back in.
And again, we'll separate this chicken so it cooks like individual pieces of chicken instead of just one big giant clump of chicken. That good?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so now that they're about even, we'll lock the lid in place. And we'll make sure our switch is on sealing. If you have other versions of an Instant Pot or other brands, some auto seal on their own. That's a nice feature, but we've just flipped our little switch to sealing. We'll set the cook time for 9 minutes, and then we'll use a quick pressure release. So we'll see you then.
Okay, so the time is up. We're going to quick release the pressure. Okay, so the float valve dropped. We can go ahead and open the lid.
A little shake to get the drips off.
See how much more liquid there is in that? So we're going to go ahead and take these chicken breasts out and set them aside to
Dice while we thicken the sauce.
So off camera, we added in the lemon juice because we forgot to add the lemon juice before we sealed up the lid.
And as always, the recipe will be included down in the description. So
You can see how tender that chicken is. It's falling apart as I'm trying to get it out, so that's awesome.
do you want to dice or do you want to thicken, Mom?
I will dice while you thicken.
Okay. All right, so while Barbara's doing that, I've got my cornstarch and I've got my water right here. Just kind of dump, and then you want to mix it before you add it to the cooking pot. Stir and stir and stir until it's nice and smooth. You don't want any lumps in your slurry because those will transfer over to your sauce. So I got that nice and mixed. It looks pretty smooth. I'm gonna just go ahead and add it to the contents of the pot. Do a little stir while I add. So cornstarch will thicken once it reaches a certain temperature. So I just canceled the pressure cook setting because it was on keep warm and selected saute. And that is going to act like a burner on the stovetop and kind of heat this up until it comes to a boil. And you'll be able to see the sauce thicken once it reaches that temperature, just before boiling point, I think.
Another thing to be aware of is we have fresh parsley today, and if you use dry parsley, you want to add it in with the lemon juice and the chicken broth. But since we're using fresh, we're just going to stir it in at the end.
Okay, so you can see it's starting to bubble and boil now. It's definitely thicker. So this is a little bit of a thinner sauce. It's not super thick like a gravy. It's a little bit thinner. So you want to, if you prefer a little bit thicker, go ahead and add another tablespoon cornstarch, tablespoon water mixed together in the slurry and repeat that. But just keep in mind that this will continue to thicken as it cools. And so if you get it looking perfect when it's bubbling and boiling, it's probably going to be too thick by the time it's cooled for a minute. So I think that's good. Okay, then we'll go ahead and add we've got our fresh parsley. We'll add that in, and we've got our butter. That just kind of adds a nice creaminess to it. And then we've got our lemon zest. I love the lemon zest because of the extra flavor it gives and the beautiful color it gives when it's on the pasta, but as always, do what works for you. You smell it?
Yeah, it smells great. You could also reverse this and dice your chicken before you cook it. You reduce your cook time. It's just whether you like to do it whole and get the easier browning, or skip the browning and chunk it up before you cook it. It's just preference.
All right, so we got that butter nice and incorporated, and the sauce is definitely a little bit thicker now. It's turning a really pretty, buttery lemon yellow.
Yeah, so at this point, probably go ahead and turn off the saute function so it doesn't
get too thick. All right, and I'll just kind of keep stirring it, A, because I like to stir things, and B, I want to help it cool off a little quicker so it doesn't get too thick.
So this was 2 pounds of chicken thighs, which was 8 chicken thighs.
You can make this recipe with chicken breasts if you would like, but the cook time will be a little bit different. The link to the recipe on our website will have all of that information on there. And as far as what you serve it with, you can serve it with a pasta. I prefer it over egg noodles. It also is great over rice. Oftentimes I'll have it over pasta for dinner, and then if there's leftovers, I'll have it over rice for the leftovers, just whatever works for you. But generally, when I'm cooking this at home, I will put a pot of water onto boil before I start any of this. It takes a lot of time for water on the stovetop to boil, so usually this is ready to start pressure cooking before it comes to a boil, and then
So that they're all done at the same
done
time.
about the same
That's
time.
great. All right, I think we should go ahead and plate it up.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, so we've got our noodles. We're just going to dish up some of this lemon chicken, and then we'll finish it off with some fresh basil. I like to buy these basil plants at the grocery store. They sell them fresh, and then you can use them for several recipes.
We tend to only use them for one recipe, and then they don't do well, so they sell like a little freeze-dried basil, but it's in like the freezer section, and those ones will last in your freezer or in your fridge for a little while. I guess it's in the fridge section, not the freezer
Yeah,
section.
so you can serve it over the noodles. I kind of styled it with the noodles on the side, but there you go. You get the idea of it, and then you finish it off with the
Your
fresh
basil.
basil.
I really like it with the fresh basil at the end, just sprinkled on top. If you like it, if you want to, you could sprinkle it in the sauce, but I don't like to reheat leftovers with the fresh basil in it. That's why I like to do it this way, but again, what works for you? So it's just that easy. You can have this on the table pretty quick for a weeknight meal if you'd like. Goes great. We usually serve it with like broccoli or a salad, just something easy, and crusty bread so you can mop up all that yummy sauce. It's my favorite. So if you make this, would love to hear from you. Let us know in the comments, like and subscribe, and thanks so much for watching.